Okay, guys, so Ryan Garcia fights David Haney today. Um, what people are saying, it's either Ryan Garcia is a marketing
So we seen
genius
there, didn't we? Oscar.
or he's absolutely crazy. There's stories that, well, this is what happened. He chugs a beer. This is crazy. He misses weight, loses $1.5 million to David Haney. Um, People saying that he's wild, he's crazy. He's talking about Bohemian Grove and exposing Didi and talking about Cat Williams. They're also saying that he looks like a hostage now because there's a very strange video that he said, I'm going to stop talking about satanic rituals and now I'm exclusively going to talk about the fight. So, anyway, um, like I said, this is either marketing genius. His fight is tonight. Whether he wins or loses, that's it's gonna be interesting. However, this inspired me to read about an article that I saw on Zero Hedge. So that's an article that I'm gonna share with you just for information and because I think it's an interesting topic. To understand the globalist, we must understand their psychopathic religion. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, the Western world experienced a sudden burst of open occultism among the ultra rich elites. The rise of Theosophy was underway, becoming a kind of fashion trend that would ultimately set the stage for what would later be called New Age spiritualism. The primary driver of the Theosophical movement was a small group of obscure academics led in part by a woman named H.P. H.P. Blavatsky. The group was obsessed with esoteric belief, Gnosticism, and even Satanism. Blavatsky co-founded the Theosophical Society in New York in 1875, claiming that she had a psychic connection to beings called the Mahatmas, or the Masters. These creatures, she asserted, helped her write the foundational books of Theosophy, including the Secret Doctrine. I bring up Theosophy and Blavatsky because the movement she helped launch was primarily elitist, an elitist one. The spread of occultism in the early 1900s especially targeted the upper classes, and this resulted in many political leaders. I suspect, however, that this was because at the time Western governments revolved around Christian and conservative values. As politicians became more separate from Christianity, the Theosophist interest in controlling government grew, and the movement became increasingly socialist in practice. Invariably, these spiritual systems revolved around pagan deities of the past, many Babylonian or ancient Egyptian in origin. That said, there are also numerous mentions in Theosophy of one figure in particular, Lucifer, also referred to as the light bearer, the angel of light, Prometheus, symbolically, the dragon, the morning star, and Satan. Modern Luciferians will consistently deny that the name Lucifer has anything to do with the biblical figure of Satan, but this is a lie. Blavatsky herself treats the two figures as synonymous in the Secret Doctrine, as she admits in her book. And now it stands proven that Satan, or the red fiery dragon, the lord of phosphorus, and Lucifer, or light bearer, is in us. It is our mind. Blavatsky, quoting Hermetic text in the Secret Doctrine, also repeats the mantra. It is Satan who is the god of our planet and only God. Luciferians and occultists will also argue that the Christian Bible only mentions the name Lucifer once, and that the two figures are not associated. This is once again a lie by omission. The Bible does in fact mention Lightbearer, the angel of light, and the dragon in reference to Satan on multiple occasions. And all of those names are used by elites to describe the figure they call Lucifer, as mentioned in Corinthians 11:14. And it is no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. In other words, when any elitist group mentions the terms such as light bearer or Lucifer, they're indeed referring to Satan. It is not just a matter of archetypal discussion. This is, in fact, a part of their religion. But in our modern times, some people might say, who cares? It's all mythical, hoodoo, and fantasy, right? I would respond with a question. Do you think the deeply held religious beliefs of the people with financial and political power matter in how they make decisions? Wouldn't their beliefs help explain why they do the things they do? If you want to know why the globalists are engaged in a very real war on the minds of the masses, you cannot overlook their religious motivations. What seems like fantasy to some is very real to the globalists. For example, many know that the United Nations building in New York has an occult library, but few people know that it was built by a group called the Lucifer Publishing Company, later changed to Lucis Trust. Lucis Trust cites the writings of H.P. Blavatsky constantly as the inspiration for their organization. The UN continues to associate with Lucis Trust to this day. The very heart of globalism revolves around Luciferian ideals. It doesn't matter what you or I think about these things. It doesn't matter if you see such concepts as metaphorical or symbolic or imaginary. They believe, and so we must explore what these beliefs mean. Before the 1800s, occultists engaged in Luciferianism would have been burned at the stake if discovered. I'm beginning to think that maybe this was the right way to handle such people all along. But to understand why, we have to look at the progression of the religion and why it inevitably leads to moral relativism and social self-destruction. For the Theosophists, Lucifer, Satan, is a kind of heroic figure. When they argue that Lucifer is not Satan, what they mean is that their version of Satan is different from the version ascribed by Christianity. In other words, imagine a group of people took a famously malicious figure such as Joseph Stalin and they devised an entirely different history for him in which he is a misunderstood philanthropist instead of a genocidal maniac. That's essentially what Luciferianism is. In the Theosophical magazine titled Lucifer, published in the 1880s, Blavatsky and her group spent multiple pages trying to separate the term Lucifer from the devil, while also defending the mythology of the devil and painting him as a character slandered by Christian culture. In their version of the Genesis story, for example, the serpent was the good guy, bringing the fruit of knowledge to Adam and Eve. Eve is venerated as a root figure in Theosophy and in feminism, a movement that the Theosophists helped to create. Because without Eve, the serpent would have never been able to get to Adam to consume the fruit. The fruit, as a representation of Gnosis knowledge, is the key to Luciferianism and the globalist cult. As many atheists I've encountered in the past have argued, isn't knowledge a good thing? And if God is punishing humanity for consuming knowledge, does that not make him a villain? This argument ignores the underlying theme. Knowledge by itself is not good nor evil, but evil thrives when people start to worship knowledge to the detriment of everything else. The application of knowledge without wisdom and moral discipline is dangerous, as Dr. Ian Malcolm brilliantly asserts in the film Jurassic Park. Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should. Luciferians openly admit that the goal of their ideology is to pursue knowledge until human beings become gods. This infatuation with goodhood is what leads to great evil. It is a delusion that poisons the mind and encourages morally relative behavior, not to mention a pervasive thirst for power. Ponder the technological aspect for a moment. Consider the numerous globalist programs to expand artificial intelligence and bring about what they call transhumanism. This is a kind of knowledge worship that has terrifying implications for the future. The integration of technology into the surveillance state to rule over society is bad enough, but what happens when human beings begin integrating technology into their biology? Will this eventually erase any semblance to what we call the soul? After all, machines do not feel, nor do they self-reflect on their actions. What happens when humans distort themselves to become more like machines? Will transhumanism become a movement that suffocates all love and empathy, removing moral compass and turning us into a demonic hive mind devoid of individual thought? Globalists assert that there's no such thing as the soul, no such thing as individual identity, and no such thing as moral compass. From their perspective, there is no danger of adopting technology as a path to goodhood because nothing would be lost. And here we see the true nature of Luciferianism at work. A perfect representation that this cancer is World Economic Forum's spokesperson Yuval Harari, a man who says the quiet part out loud and promotes the darker tenets of Luciferianism regularly. To grasp what Luciferianism is, think of it as the anti-God, a war on nature, or a war on the natural state of humanity disguised as enlightenment. This is why globalists try to institute the extreme opposite view of every natural position. The notion of human beings as a blank slate that Yuval Harari clings to is one such false narrative. It is a philosophy that has been debunked by endless psychological studies as well as anthropological studies. From Carl Jung to Joseph Campbell to Steven Pinker and beyond, all scientific evidence suggests that human beings have inherent psychological qualities and characteristics from birth. Some of these are unique to the person. Some are universal archetypes and ideas that the majority of people share, such as conscience and moral compass. If we didn't have these built-in qualities, humanity would have become extinct thousands of years ago. We still don't know where exactly they come from. We only know that without them, we are no longer human. There is, however, a certain percentage of people, 1% or less, that actually do not have these inborn character traits. They are generally known as psychopaths and sociopaths, and their behavior is very similar to that of the globalists. I have long held the theory that the globalist cabal is in fact a cult of higher functioning psychopaths. Their lack of empathy and conscience, their thirst for goodhood and omnipotence, their drive to attain all-encompassing surveillance of the population, to know everything about us all the time, to have total control over the environment and society, the narcissistic self-image of a supreme ruler who is worshipped by the masses, and the delusion that they will be able to read minds and predict the future. These are psychopathic fantasies, and they are willing to chase these fantasies by any means necessary. But even psychopaths sometimes need a fundamentalist framework in order to maintain organization and inspire devotion within a group. It makes perfect sense that they would choose Luciferianism as their religion. Their do what thou wilt philosophy of hedonism takes the idea of freedom and removes all responsibility. It is a degenerate view of liberty rather than a principled view. Freedom, they think, is only for people like them, the people willing to desecrate everything in their path and upend the natural order. As psychopaths, they are devoid of natural inborn contents and are more robotic than human. So it's no surprise that people like Harari argue there's no soul, no freedom for you, and that machines are capable of the same creativity as humans. An empty person with no soul or creativity is going to assume that all other people are empty. An immoral person will also be compelled to prove that everyone else is just as immoral as he is. Or will be compelled to prove that he is superior to everyone else because he has embraced this immorality. Do the elites actually believe in a real devil with hooves and horns and a pitchfork? I don't know. What matters, though, is the philosophical drive of their cultism. Their goal is to convince a majority of the populace that there's no God and there's no evil. Everything is empty. Everything is relative to the demands of the moment. And the demands of the society, of course, they want to control society. So then everything would really be relative to their demands. If you want to see something truly demonic, imagine a world in which all inherent truth is abandoned for the sake of subjective perception. A world that caters to the preferences of psychopaths with no ethical imperative. A world where the ends always justify the means. This is the Luciferian way and the globalist way. And no matter how much they deny it, the reality of their beliefs is visible in the fruits of their labors. Wherever they go, destruction, chaos, and death follow. So let's read, it's always interesting to read some of the comments. Yeah, we'll just spend a minute in the comment section. Weimar Germany attracted transvestites, homosexuals, pedophiles, liars, thieves, and murderers as well. Then they disappeared. God help us that we get rid of them again. It's nothing more than a cheesy, toxic cult group. They have no magical powers, and even less intelligence. There's even a story of Aleister Crowley devotees and their rivals having a wizard's battle in the stairwell of their offices that went down about as well as an 8-year-old's Harry Potter themed birthday party. As dogmatic belief-based religions faded and science took over the more cuckoo intellectual types, went off the reservation and opted for a more proactive religion of ritual, Satan, and various nonsense, the end game being, like any religious cult, to gain power over minions, to control them to the fullest extent.